fentanyl, the Tillerson firing, and wind energy. And then whatever else the congressman wants to bring up, he's always a great guest. Good morning, Congressman Keating. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Chris. I guess first off, I think I join everyone, including your listeners, at the tragedy that occurred. We don't know all the details. 7 of our military personnel were killed, and the news is just coming out in the Syrian and Iraq border.
Yes.
It appears to be a helicopter crash. It's still under investigation. But it's a reminder to all of us, I think, every day that we have military people all around the world risking their lives for us.
No, I appreciate that, Congressman. I think they're, all of us have them in their prayers, and very tragic. And you never know when you put that uniform on, whatever service you're in, and that includes domestic law enforcement and firefighters, just what the day is going to bring.
No, and you know, this occurred in a very important area of the world, and a very dangerous part of the world. But the training missions that go on all the time. I had a state police trooper that worked for me, and her son was killed in a training mission out of Hawaii. Some people might remember that tragedy. And you know, these are dangerous tasks that these people work every day for. So it's sad that we're reminded when there's a tragedy, but we should think about it every day.
No, you're absolutely right. We're speaking with Congressman William Keating, certainly, who's our congressman. Congressman, we've got a lot of stuff to cover today, a lot of things going on. So let's tick it off. I want to start out with talking about the firing of Rex Tillerson. Of course, many of our listeners are familiar with the fact that you taken testimony from and we've had the video up from Rex Tillerson when he was the Secretary of State. What are your thoughts on the firing of Rex Tillerson?
Well, I was disappointed in many respects. I think I brought through my questioning what he was really encountering day to day, and probably beyond the President of the United States, one of the most important offices in our country. The fact that he was undercut, the President giving his son-in-law authority over him in many respects, in terms of particularly Middle East issues and the frustration there, as well as the President himself. Look at the Qatar naval blockade, look at the Iran issues, and look at the North Korean negotiations. And within hours of our Secretary of State saying one thing, the President pulled the rug out from under him. And really, Secretary Tillerson, I think, as an honest person, a professional, I think he was a little too geared at just the organizational mechanisms within the Secretary of State and not in the overall picture. However, I didn't think he had a fair chance.
Okay. He of course came from a business background like President Trump, but they seem to be very different people.
This is a person that was recognized as one of the 25 most influential people long before he had this position in our country. So this is a person with a lot of credentials, and now it appears that General H.R. McMaster is the next on the chopping block, someone, again, that is well-respected around the world, particularly with our military, so that it appears that he will be next. And that's unfortunate because some of the names they're looking at, like John Bolton, are people with really, and I know, Chris, you're a conservative, but these are people like Bolton are so far off even the conservative side of things. They're writing articles seeking, the bombing of Iran, or the advocating for the attacks on countries like North Korea, something that is way off the mainstream right now.
We're speaking with Congressman William Keating. Congressman, do you think, and I know it's speculative at this point, but do you think that the affairs with Jared Kushner and what's been going on with that have anything to do with Rex Tillerson being dismissed?
Well, I think the fact that he was given the power he was, Jared, right from the outset, undercutting. I'll tell you a quick story. Sure. I met with an ambassador from a country in a private conversation. These things can't be public, so I won't use his name. But they weren't familiar, a major ally of ours, by the way. They weren't familiar with the Trump administration, and they sought a former Secretary of State and said, where do I start with the administration? Is it Secretary Tillerson? Is he the right person? I don't know much about him. And the person said, it's Jared Kushner that's the most influential. So right from the first day he had office, he had this really his authority undercut. And that's something maybe you go back to the revolutionary times where our Secretary of States have been so at odds with our president.
Yes, good example. Well, so we're going to stay tuned to that, folks. I encourage you. You can go to Congressman Keating's website and see his a small clip, which is the best way I know people like to absorb video these days, of him taking testimony from Rex Tillerson that I think is enlightening, and you can see that on his website. Of course, we'll have this interview up on WBSM.com as well. Congressman, we're going to go to wind, but I want to stick on foreign affairs here for a second. You've recently introduced and increased the conversations about China and their role in fentanyl. Enlighten your constituents on what you're doing there.
Well, besides the Foreign Affairs Committee, I'm also on the Homeland Security Committee, and I've sought meetings, with the highest officials that we had in our government to deal with the fentanyl issue in China, where so much of this is manufactured. And yesterday I had a meeting with the attaché from Hong Kong that's in charge of Homeland Security investigations emanating from China. And it was Christopher Pater, who I met with, and he really was very enlightening to me on the difficulties that we do have trying to stem the fentanyl manufacture out of China. They had many successes. They're taking down kilos of fentanyl, and when you think of that, remember this. If someone is taking, how you might put sugar in a cup of coffee,
sure,
those little packets?
Right.
If you looked at 2 of those granules in that packet of sugar, just 2 of those granules is enough fentanyl to create an overdose.
Really?
So when you're looking at some of the things they've taken down massive amounts. However, he was explaining to me through the way they set up corporate shells that they use for distribution of not just these drugs, but a lot of products out of China, and how difficult it is to penetrate that, how they're using, the mail, frankly, and encrypted type of internet communications. It's so hard to do that. And we get back to the point that that's one aspect of enforcement, and when we're successful, and they deserve a little credit. They've taken down some major loads. But number 2, it goes back to the need for prevention and treatment in the first place, and really curbing demand, something I learned when I was a district attorney.
Congressman, just to circle back to John Bolton, I had an interview with him a little while ago. Well, actually, it was during the election season of 2016, and we discussed fentanyl in China. And you two may have something in common there. He's quite critical of the Chinese and believes that they're using it not just for cash, but also as a tool of disruption here in the United States to flooding our young people with fentanyl. So you two may, at least on one thing, agree. Should he rise into the administration? Congressman, is there any hope the Chinese will curb their behavior? Is there anything that we think we can do?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, you know what I learned too? I learned how difficult it is, even would be for the Chinese to. Some of these facilities aren't major factories the way we would envision it.
Okay.
They're small, little factories. They might be a business in the daytime and shift to something else at nighttime. So they have their own abilities, their own challenges at cracking down on this. And I think that's one of the things I learned from our conversation yesterday, just how difficult the situation is in terms of curbing the supply. But we're continuing to upgrade our ability to do it. And I can't go into detail, but he revealed to me some of the successes they had on penetrating those corporate shells and getting information to take down some of these bigger deliveries.
Excellent. We're speaking with Congressman William Keating, who, of course, is our congressman. Congressman, so yesterday we had the woman, Lauren Brum from from Bay State Wind, who was in here discussing wind power, and I thought it was very interesting that you're involved in a wind bill. I think I received the press release yesterday from your staff. Talk to us about what you and the other members in Congress are doing about bringing up increasing wind power here in the Bay State and across the country.
Well, one of the most important needs in our areas is to really do everything we can do to get people and give people the opportunity for the new jobs in our economy. And one of those jobs will surround, a lot of those jobs surround wind power. 81% of our growth in this state alone, over it, in the last several years has come from energy jobs, clean energy jobs. So these are going to be new jobs coming into our region. And what I wanted to do with this bill is to prioritize the money that's there for training into training for these new energy jobs. And that's going to benefit our region should this go forward, because those jobs will be there. And it serves the greater good as well. This will create a regional approach. One of the most important things about expansion of secondary industries around the job, the wind power, will be, do we have trained, educated personnel for it? So this is an effort to make sure that our local people have that opportunity. It's for regional training in that area, and it's working with unions and nonprofits and schools in providing resources to them to try and drive this forward. And as we all know, this is going to be a major industry. The terminal is going to be in New Bedford, staging all this. And this is an opportunity to really look at the human infrastructure that's necessary and have that in place. And it'll also, I think, speed along the implementation of this power, something we need desperately with the closure of Pilgrim.
Well, right. We have more and more power sources going offline here in the region, and we're only going to be using more power. So, and this is excellent. It's interesting because yesterday with Ms. Byrne from Bay State Wind, we talked about the job training, because they're trying to do something with Bristol Community College, or they are doing something with Bristol Community College regarding training. So you and the other people in Congress, you're looking to, what was the term you used, human infrastructure?
Yes, and if we build that, we're going to make sure the jobs are here. We don't want to have a situation where this industry is giving a huge boost to our area, but some of the jobs are coming from the outside. If we can build it from within, that's going to help our economic activity in our region, the growth of that to secondary industries, and it's going to be something that helps the families in our area. Gives young people a chance and people in transition. One of the things it highlights is the fact that if there is a dislocation within the energy field, and we're going to see that when Pilgrim is closed, that those people get retrained for these new jobs too.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the thing that drives a lot of people crazy is when you see like a highway project and you see all the trucks with out-of-state plates. Yeah. And some of that is just a function of the labor supply. We get that, but that does drive people crazy.
Well, they're already in place discussions and promises that from the building trades and local labor that they'll have that commitment. But this is also making sure that those technological jobs that are necessary they're in place too, and that people are trained and ready to go, and they're not going to be bringing in people from the outside.
Excellent. So we're speaking with Congressman Keating, and folks, if you're just joining us, you will be able to catch this in its entirety on WBSM YouTube channel as well, and we'll break it down by subject matter as well, make it easier for you to consume. Congressman, so bring it local here. Of course, this is a St. Patrick's Day weekend coming up. You are the grandson, I believe, of Irish immigrants.
Yes, my grandmother and grandfather came over here and met each other here, had a family here. My grandmother was, well, for lack of a term at the time, she was a house servant. My grandfather worked in the fields. Farming, and did whatever he could to get by, and they raised a family and served our country in the military and have gone forward. And I think it's something we celebrate at St. Patrick's Day. It used to be simply a day of jokes and drinking beer and everything green, but it's important to focus on the fact that the Irish and so many other groups in our region, Portuguese Americans certainly, are a great example, how they have come to this country and helped build this country, and it's a day to celebrate that as well.
Oh, excellent. And, of course, we have our New Bedford Half Marathon, which is now sponsored by the Friendly Sons of St. Patrick, of which one of your former staffers, Hugh Dunn, is, of course, a member of. So do you have any words for the runners tomorrow?
Well, I think it's a good thing they weren't running a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Or would be in big trouble. I've been there. Actually, one time I was given the honor of starting the race. I'm a member of the Friendly Sons.
Oh, great.
And it's a great group. We had one of the leaders of Sinn Féin, a growing political group in Ireland, here honoring her this weekend. Yesterday in Washington, I met with the Taoiseach. I met with Mary Lou McDonald, who was an past honoree of the Friendly Sons here in New Bedford. And she is now the head of Sinn Féin and one of the leaders in the entire country. So New Bedford seems to be a portal for these Irish leaders coming in before they have that position, and being honored here, and they're going on to be national leaders in Ireland. So it's a good thing. I think if you believe in good luck, I think these Irish leaders should come to New Bedford, be honored by the Friendly Sons, and they seem to be the people advancing back home.
I don't think Jerry Adams was ever able to get here, though.
I'm afraid he wasn't, although I saw him yesterday.
Did you?
I talked with him yesterday. He was in D.C., and I've met him over the years. And he's a person who, did a hard thing in politics. He gracefully stepped down and opened up the avenue for, a bright young woman, Mary Lou McDonald, and he, he's trying to ease that transition forward to a new era. And I do think things are changing. I've been very involved on the Foreign Affairs Committee with some of the difficulties in making sure the Good Friday peace agreement goes forward. It's under challenge now on many fronts, and one of them is the fact that as part of the Brexit, where the UK decided to leave the European Union, that's creating great problems of what we do with that border that used to be a flashpoint of violence and disruption, making sure that that border, and everything we've been able to maintain in the peace effort is maintained going forward, not interrupted by Brexit.
Well, it's always been a very interesting subject to me. We always got the Irish echo at my house growing up. My parents were very much interested in the Troubles. And I can remember in 1981, I was in the 5th grade when Bobby Sands died, at Longcash Prison. So I've always followed it, and you're right. Jerry Adams did an incredible thing, quite frankly, by demilitarizing the IRA and putting himself into although I know he claimed he was never in the IRA, but that put himself in incredible danger from his own side and from the British. Quite incredible, actually.
The relationship with the U.S. and Ireland, obviously, is historic and generational. But I don't know if any of your listeners ever want to do this. I get inspired by this. Of all people, Bono, the leader of U2, the musical group, is doing so much himself for world peace and everything. But there's a wonderful clip of him that people can get. I don't know if you want to link it to your area. It only lasts 2 or 3 minutes, but it is his impression of the U.S. as a citizen of Ireland, and it is so moving and inspirational, where he will say, he loves Ireland, he loves other countries, but the only country in the world that was formed from an idea was the United States. And it's not about right or left in the United States. It's been about right or wrong. And take us, maybe you want to play that on St. Patrick's Day or do something, because it really drives home what other countries believe in terms of the American dream and how that has been a part of their democracy going forward.
No, that's an excellent point. And
have you seen that, Chris?
I have seen it. I always thought it was funny. Jesse Helms and Bono became very close friends. For those folks who don't know, Jesse Helms, who recently died, was one of the most conservative, arch right-wing senators, and he and Bono worked on poverty issues, I think, in Africa, of all places. Yeah. So very, very interesting. And, of course, the relationship between Ireland and America is when you think about Edmund Burke, who, of course, Irish and writing on behalf of the revolution, to the Parliament, a member of which he was a member of the body. It's just an incredible relationship. And you're an excellent example of it. If you think about it, your grandparents immigrated here, and you're at the highest levels of our government now.
I wish in my life, you probably do too, but I wish in my life that my grandparents could see that I actually became a U.S. congressman, because I remember growing up, and they were talking about Al Smith,
Sure.
the first Catholic that ran for president.
Right.
He didn't have a chance, but they did that. And we all lived through, most of us listening, lived through the era when John Kennedy finally became president, and to have an Irish American become president, what a breakthrough that was. I look back, and I wish if I had a moment to talk to my grandparents that I could let them know that.
Well, God willing, they know, Congressman. Just before, and we're speaking with Congressman William Keating here about foreign affairs, but about our shared Irish heritage, and everyone's Irish on St. Patrick's Day, of course. But Congressman, I was speaking with one of your staff members, and I thought we do this, and we do a lot of big topics, but I think sometimes there are people out there that don't realize just how much help your office can do for them for a lot of different things, whether it's immigration, Social Security, veterans, who knows what the problem is. Congressman, I just wanted you to take a quick second and make a pitch for people to know that how they can reach your offices here locally, and just how much help you folks and your staff can give them when they need it.
It's one of the most important functions that we do have. and I've got a lot of pride in our offices, and we have our office in New Bedford. But you know what happens on occasion? I might be at an event, or even I was pulled out of a parade once in the town of Plymouth, and I said, "Oh my God, this person literally grabbed my arm and pulled me, and I didn't know what was going on." And they brought me up to a man that was sitting in a wheelchair, and he was a World War II vet. And he said, "I want you to just know," he wanted to thank you personally. You know, his house was being foreclosed on, and our office intervened and found out it wasn't done correctly and did that. And those kind of stories, and I don't take credit for them because I just have such great people that work for me and so dedicated themselves. People should be aware when you're having a problem with government, I can't guarantee we'll solve everything, but I'll guarantee this. We will push it as far as it can go to try and get an answer to see what's going on and what we can do to help. And people should take advantage when they feel there's no place else to go. That's a place that you shouldn't ignore.
Yeah, and I think I think I've been derelict in glossing over that just because it's a common thing that I know about your office. But I think people out there sometimes they think, well, he's a congressman, he's a busy person, but you're busy helping people. That's what you want, right?
Well, I grew up. For instance, you mentioned veterans. My dad was a veteran service agent in the town I grew up in for over 3 decades, and you know, I grew up in a household where you know his brother was killed in action, and where my grandmother was a Gold Star mother, and where we grew up as really understanding our obligation to those that served, and that has been really transferred into our office. I have a great deal of pride in, whether it's a Social Security issue, but particularly on veterans issues, where we try and cut through what recently has been, sometimes delayed process, things we're working on with the Veterans Choice issue and other issues to try and correct and make them more efficient. But there's a lot of pride in the work that the people that work for me put into constituent work, and it's certainly, I would say, in an era when you're saying, you throw your hands up and say, boy, what can you do in this Congress? Well, you know, every day you can change lives, and you can do it through those offices.
Absolutely. And look, I get emails from your staff in Washington, returning personal emails of mine to them at 11 o'clock at night, and then I'll get a follow-up at 9 the next morning. I don't know when they're sleeping, quite frankly, but you do have a very dedicated staff and in Washington and locally here, and I know many of them. Well, Congressman, first of all, have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll have this entire interview, folks, up on WBSM.
Well, thank you, Chris, and both of us can take a little time and celebrate our common Irish heritage.
Thank you, sir. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Folks, that was Congressman William Keating, our congressman here, taking some time, again, as part of his weekly commitment here on the Chris McCarthy Show to join us every week and answer my questions and keep us abreast of what's going on in Washington. I'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go to the phones, 508-996-0500.